Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Dental Board of California meeting. I'm Dr. Alan Felsenfeld, and I'm the president of the board. Today is Friday, November 18, 2022. This board meeting is being held in person with additional public participation through WebEx. For all those who wish to participate online, please log on to the WebEx site provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference and not the microphone or speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. During each call for comments from board members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comment shortly. For individuals participating via WebEx, when called upon, the moderator will give the individual permission to unmute themselves, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment. The moderator will audibly announce when 30 seconds remain to conclude the public comment. After the 2 minutes have lapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify on a particular agenda item, a total time limit may be imposed. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with the testimony provided, please just state your name and that you are in support of any comments previously provided. I would now like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during the meeting.
This is the moderator. When public comment is requested, I will turn on the question and answer feature to facilitate this. Comments should be limited to the topic addressed in that specific agenda item. I will display instructions on the screen each time, and members of the public may click on the question mark, typically at the lower right-hand corner of their WebEx screen, and type the word comment into the text box for their request to be recognized. You may also choose to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon at the bottom row of your computer's WebEx screen, or if you're an audio-only participant, you can raise your hand by pressing *3 on your device. Each commenter will be then invited to unmute themselves in turn, and they'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. At the end of that time, their microphone will then be muted, and we will move on to the next commenter for public comment.
Thank you. I would like to call the meeting to order and ask the board secretary to please call the roll. Dr. Molina, welcome.
My name is Sonia Molina, and I'm the board secretary. I'm now going to take roll. Chan?
Chan, present.
Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, present.
Forge?
Forge, present.
Larin?
Larin, present.
Mackenzie?
Mackenzie here.
Medina?
Medina here.
Molina here. Morrow?
Morrow here.
Olagi?
Olagi here.
Pacheco?
Pacheco, present.
Tucker?
Thakur here.
And you?
You present.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you, Dr. Molina. We will now move on to agenda item 21, the President's report on closed session items. The board met in closed session yesterday to discuss 2 pending litigation matters and 1 pending disciplinary matter. There is nothing further to report. Is there any public comment from on-site participants? Seeing none, is DCA moderator if you'll facilitate public comment for those on WebEx?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. We will now move on to Agenda Item 22A, General Anesthesia and Conscious Sedation Permit Evaluation and Statistics. Ms. Jessica Olney, Anesthesia Unit Manager, will present this agenda item. Good morning, Jessica.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Felsenfeld and members of the board. My name is Jessica Olney. I'm the manager for the anesthesia unit, and I'll be presenting the the general anesthesia and conscious sedation statistics for the first fiscal year of 2022-2023. The agenda item includes charts and tables which break down the results of the on-site inspection and evaluations completed, which are separated by the permit type in addition to the 4 previous fiscal years which are included. The end breaks down with the evaluator pool for Northern and Southern California regions. No action is requested on this report, and the data is provided as informational. I am available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Is there any board member discussion? Thank you. Is there any on-site public comment? Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you, yes. We're moving on to Agenda Item 22B, an update regarding board implementation of SB 501, Glazer, Chapter 929, Statutes of 2018. Ms. Olney, if you'll continue and report on that for us.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. SB 501, which became effective January 1st, 2019, made significant changes to the current general anesthesia, medical general anesthesia, conscious sedation, and oral conscious sedation for minors permits, and introduces new moderate sedation permit, pediatric minimal sedation permit, and pediatric endorsements, as well as patient monitoring requirements when administering moderate sedation, deep sedation, or general anesthesia to a minor patient. To implement these changes, board staff with subject matter experts and legal counsel developed proposed regulatory language, which was approved by the board on November 19, 2021. The initial rulemaking file was submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, referred to as OAL for publication, which initiated a 45-day public comment period on December 31st, 2021. Public comment was received. A special meeting was held where the board took action to accept the staff recommendations on the comments received and approved the modified text and documents added to the rulemaking file, and directed staff to complete the rulemaking process. On May 2nd, 2022, the rulemaking package was submitted to OAL, but the package was withdrawn on June 14th. After discussion with OAL, staff identified substantial changes needed to approve the package. The board meeting was held on June 28, 2022, where action was taken to approve the modified text. The rulemaking file, the second modified text, was submitted to OAL on July 21st, 2022, and the regulations were approved on August 16, 2022. On August 23rd, an announcement was sent to licensees and interested parties, which included links to the new websites for each of the permits, and board staff received the first application on August 26th. The table shown on page 113 of the meeting materials shows the number of applications received, how many are deficient, and how many have been approved. Additional applications have been received since then, and as of August 15th, 7 general anesthesia applications have been received. Of those, 1 is deficient, 6 have been approved. 8 applications for a pediatric endorsement for general anesthesia have been received. 1 is deficient and 7 have been approved. Medical general anesthesia permit initial applications, we've received 4. 2 are deficient, 2 have been approved. And the pediatric endorsement application for medical general anesthesia, we've received 8 applications. 3 are deficient, 5 have been approved. The moderate sedation permit initial application, we've received 44 applications. 6 are deficient, 38 have been approved. And pediatric moderate sedation applications, we have received none as of the 15th. Applications for pediatric minimal sedation permit, we've received 16, 3 are deficient, and 13 have been approved. No action is requested again. This is informational, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. It's encouraging. We're starting to see this happen. Is there any board member discussion on this topic? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment on this topic? Again, seeing none, are there public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? Would the moderator please facilitate the lines for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time access to these features and to submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. We're going to move to item 22C, a discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of general anesthesia and moderate sedation evaluators. Ms. Olney, continue, please.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. The board conducts on-site inspections and evaluations of existing general anesthesia, medical general anesthesia, and conscious sedation permit applicants and permit holders, which includes the facilities, equipment, personnel, and procedures utilized. The evaluation team consists of 2 or more permit holders who have been approved by the board. The evaluators, who are subject matter experts, provide independent evaluations and make recommendations to pass or fail the permit holder in accordance with California Code of Regulations 1016-43.6. To implement changes made by SB 501 in the approved rulemaking file, the on-site inspection and evaluation program now include the new moderate sedation permit. Since the new moderate sedation inspection and evaluation program regulation was just made operative, the board currently does not have a pool of moderate sedation program evaluators. Board staff are requesting that the board consider appointing existing general anesthesia permit evaluators to be utilized for the moderate sedation on-site inspection and evaluations until a pool of moderate sedation permit holders is formed. A list of current GA evaluators begins on page 118 of the meeting materials. In addition, board staff requests to appoint Dr. Jay Fedorowicz as a general anesthesia evaluator, and his application is also included in the meeting materials. We ask that the board review and discuss the staff's recommendations and consider the 2 motions on page 117 of the meeting materials, and I'm available to answer any questions.
I'll start with a question. I have a GA permit, and I think the reason that we need to appoint the GA permittees to the moderate sedation evaluations is because I could do that for conscious sedation, but conscious sedation is no longer here. We just need to transfer it over to do moderate sedation evaluations with a GA permit. Is that correct?
Correct, until we are able to permit new permit holders and get new permit holders to apply to become evaluators.
Because we're creating a new category. That's there's no confusion as to we have to do those only and so on.
Correct.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much, because I had received a question about that earlier. All right, thank you. Is there any further board concerns or questions for Ms. Olney on this topic? Seeing none, we have some public comment on site. Dr. Atchison, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mike
Can you
on?
hear me here?
Yeah, we can.
So I'm Dr. Guy Atchison. I'm a general dentist. I do moderate sedation from before there was a permit. I have been an on-site evaluator from the beginning of the program. And I have serious concerns about access to care because of the cancellation of all the existing moderate sedation evaluators during this transition period. Dr. Bruce Witcher, previous member of your body, really sort of shepherded the whole office evaluation program from the very beginning, and virtually at every meeting was bemoaning the lack of evaluators and the difficulty in getting cases scheduled because of the lack of evaluators. Now you're going to take your general anesthesia pool and essentially expand its requirements by almost 2/3, and even more than that, because the previous moderate sedation evaluations usually required a team of 2, one being general anesthesia and the other being moderate sedation. Now you're going to have moderate sedation teams that are both general anesthesia permit holders. So I really don't see how the mechanics of this is going to work over this transition period. And I really see it as being a problem getting moderate sedation permittees permitted. I don't conceptually understand why existing moderate sedation evaluators couldn't continue this program for a while, because there's nothing about the requirements for moderate sedation that exceeds any moderate sedation evaluator that was a conscious sedation evaluator, meaning IV sedation. Really, my understanding of a new moderate sedation permit is it's including people that use just oral sedation to a moderate level, where previously they weren't part of the CS evaluation pool. So that's my comment. I think access to care is a problem, and I don't see a reasonable way that you can expand your general anesthesia pool and stay on track.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments from on-site individuals? Are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And audio-only participants can raise their hand by pressing *3 on their device. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Please do. We need some motions to appoint the evaluators. Is there anyone, if we go to page 117 on our meeting book, the 2 motions that are suggested by staff are there. Let us split them into 2 separate motions. Is there anyone who is willing to make the motion to number 1? Dr. Chan. And please read that into the record for us, Dr. Chan.
Sure. I'm going to move to appoint the existing general anesthesia evaluators who meet the qualifications of CCR Title 16, Section 1043.2 for moderate sedation inspection and evaluation as evaluators for the moderate sedation on-site inspection and evaluation program. We're splitting it, right?
Thank you. Is there any second for that motion?
You second.
Thank you, Dr. Yu. Is there any further board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment on the motion? Seeing none, DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment for those on WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
That will be fine, thank you. Dr. Molina, will you please take a vote on the motion before us?
Yes. Chen,
Chan, aye.
Felsenfeld,
Felsenfeld, aye.
Forge. Forge, aye. Larin. Larin, aye. McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
Medina.
Medina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Olagi.
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Tucker.
Tucker, aye.
You.
You, aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Dr. Molina. The second part of Ms. Olney's request from staff relates to the appointment of, I assume he is a new evaluator, not previously with us, so that's Dr. Jay Fedorowicz. I'll be happy to move to appoint Dr. Jay Fedorowicz as an evaluator for general anesthesia on-site inspection and evaluation program. I see Dr. Chan and then Dr. Morrow, but Dr. Chan, you're seconding the motion. Okay, thank you. Is there any further board discussion on this motion? Okay, seeing none, is there any on-site public comment for this motion? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public on WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. It appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Good, yes, thank you very much. Board Secretary, please take the roll.
Chen.
Chan, aye.
Felsenfeld.
Aye, Felsenfeld.
Forge. Forge, aye. Larin. Larin, aye. McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
Medina.
Medina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Olagi.
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
Tucker, aye. You.
You, aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Dr. Molina. We now move on to agenda item 22D, a discussion and possible action on legislative proposal to add Business and Professions Code sections 1647.35 and 1647.36 and amend Business and Profession Code sections 1647.35 and 1647.36 related to pediatric minimal sedation. Ms. Olney, please continue.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. Again, SB 501 made significant changes to the anesthesia and sedation permits. The changes include repealing Business and Professions Code 1647.10 through 1647.17, statutes for the oral conscious sedation for minors certificate. It added 1647.30 through 1647.36, creating the new pediatric minimal sedation permit required for administering pediatric minimal sedation to dental patients under the age of 13. Existing oral conscious sedation for minor permit holders can continue to practice under the terms of the existing permits until they expire. However, when the permits expire, they must comply with the new pediatric minimal sedation permit requirements. As staff continue to work on the implementation of SB 501, they found additional cleanup that it needs to be made to the language. The first item identified in the legislative proposal is the continuing education requirement. While other anesthesia and sedation permit statutes require continuing education for the renewal of the permit, SB 501 did not include continuing education requirements for the renewal of the pediatric minimal sedation permit. To be consistent with the oral conscious sedation for minors permit, board staff proposed that the pediatric minimal sedation permit holder be required to complete 7 units of continuing education at each biannual renewal by adding Business and Professions Code 1647.35. Is that correct? Sorry. SB 501 also did not establish an expiration date for the pediatric minimal sedation permit. For consistency, board staff recommend using the same statutory expiration date used for existing anesthesia and sedation permits by adding Business and Professions Code 1647.36. To insert the two provisions, staff also recommend renumbering existing statutes 1647.35 to 1647.37 and 1647.36 to 1647.38. We ask that the board review and discuss the recommendation on page 127 and the legislative proposal, which begins on page 128 of the meeting materials. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Olney. Is there any board member discussion or questions for Ms. Olney? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment on this topic? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public on WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. Please do that. All right, we are looking for a motion. If we turn to our meeting materials on page 127, there's an action that's requested by staff, and in the middle of the action requested, there is a motion which I'll be happy to make for further discussion. That is a motion. I'd like to make a motion to include in the board's Sunset Review Report a recommendation to the California State Legislature to add BPC section 1647.35 and 1647.36 and amend sections 1647.35 and 1647.36 to include continuing education requirements and establish the expiration date of the PMS permit, period. Is there a second? See Dr. Morrow this time for a second. Is there board discussion on this issue? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment? Seeing none, is there any public comment from those on the WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the telephone lines for public comment from those on the WebEx.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. Do that, please. Appreciate it. I think, Ms. Olney, I think you're done right now. We're going to move on to the tentative legislative calendar. Am I
we have
correct?
to vote.
Oh, we got to vote. We should vote on it. Yeah. Okay. I haven't had too much coffee yet today. Thank you, Ms. Welch. All right, let's vote. What the heck? I made the motion. I'd like to see it pass. Okay. Go ahead. Board Secretary, please take the vote.
Chen,
Chan, yes.
Besenfeld,
Felsenfeld, yes.
Ford. Ford, yes. McKenzie. McKenzie, yes. Medina.
Medina, yes.
Molina, yes. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Olagi.
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco.
Pacheco, yes.
Tucker.
Tucker, yes.
You.
You, aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Dr. Molina. And with the permission of the board, we'll now move to item 23A, the tentative legislative. Ms. Olney, thank you. Mr. Bruggeman, come on up. Legislative calendar, sir.
Hello, I'm David Bruggeman, the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist with the Board. We're going to discuss briefly the 2023 legislative calendar for the California Legislature. I apologize. Before we get into the 2023 action, I'll simply note that the governor has called a special session of the legislature to commence on December 5th. It has a specific focus that is not germane to any of the board's functions or its mission, and so we do not anticipate any activity coming out of the special session that the board would need to be notified of or may conceivably take a vote on. The legislative business that would concern the board would commence in earnest at the beginning of January. And the calendar's there in terms of how the legislature is going to conduct its business are opportunities to make comments on legislation that that is working through the legislature are going to come most likely at our February and our May meetings as bills are introduced and are being moved through their house of origin. As we move from the first half of the year into the summer, any bills that are passed and go into the additional house, we would have already been in a position to weigh in on those bills through votes and letters of support or opposition, depending on the board's stance, and make our input known to the relevant bodies at that time. The legislature is scheduled to run until the middle of September of 2023, at which point any legislation that has not passed at that point could conceivably carry over into the next year, but that is not a guarantee. So at this point, does anybody have any questions concerning the calendar?
Any board member discussion about the calendar? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment about the calendar? Seeing none, is there any public comment from those participating via WebEx? Would the DCA moderator please once again activate the telephone lines for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Thank you. Do that. We now move on. Mr. Bruggeman, thank you. You've got another item to present, and that is the 2021-2022 end-of-session legislative summary report, item number 23B.
Thank you, President Felsenfeld. The memo that begins on page 134 of your meeting materials summarizes the board's legislative tracking activity as well as the positions that the board has taken during the most recently concluded two-year session of the legislature. Those bills are summarized in the memo, and as well as indicating what bills that are of interest to the board and to licensees were passed during those times or vetoed, depending on the specific legislation in question. Following the memo, what we have is a legislative summary report covering those bills that were passed into law that the board has been tracking during the 2021-2022 legislative session, and we are asking the board to consider and possibly adopt this summary report and direct staff to post that on our website, which is something that the board has done at the conclusion of previous sessions of the legislature.
Okay. Is there additional comment from the board on all this? Is there on-site comment about this from the public? Again, DCA moderator, please you allow for the telephone lines to open so that public comment on WebEx can be heard.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. Right, and it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. We now need a motion from the board to possibly adopt the attached legislative summary for the end of 2021-2022 legislative session and to direct staff to post the report on the board's website. Do I have a motion? Ms. Medina, sorry. Push it. It'll turn green. Bring that closer to your mouth, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I just lost it.
Page 3 of 13, I think, on page
136. Motion to adopt legislative summary for the end of 2021-22 legislative session and to direct staff to post the report on the board's website.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Dr. Loreen, thank you very much for the second. Is there any further board discussion on this topic? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment on this topic? Seeing none, we will now take comments from the public on WebEx. DCA moderator, please open the lines to facilitate public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And it appears there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Board Secretary, would you like to take the vote?
Yes. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Felsenfeld.
Felsenfeld, aye.
Ford. Larin.
And there'll be a
McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
Medina.
Medina, aye.
Molina, aye. Morrow.
Morrow, aye.
Olagi.
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco.
Pacheco, aye.
Stafford. Dr.
Aye.
And you.
You, aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much, Board Secretary. We are now on agenda item 24. This is a discussion and a possible action on a legislative proposal to amend BPC Sections 1752.1, 1752.4, and 1907, and repeal BPC Section 1752.6 related to registered dental hygienist application requirements to obtain a registered dental assistant license and permitted duties. Mr. Bruggeman, please continue.
Thank you, President Felsenfeld. This legislative proposal came before the Dental Assistant Council at its August meeting, and at the direction of the council, we have since, board staff have since worked with the staff of the Dental Hygiene Board to refine the language of the proposal, and I want to go ahead and thank Mr. Lum, the Executive Officer of the Dental Hygiene Board, as well as Dr. Petty, for working with our staff to make sure that the language is conducive to the interests of both our boards. The basic idea behind this particular proposal is that staff, in review of the law concerning the abilities of registered dental hygienists in alternative practice, or registered dental hygienists in extended functions, by which I'm going to refer to all of as registered dental hygienists, they have the ability under current statute to perform the duties of a registered dental assistant, and they would be able to qualify for and receive a registered dental assistant license prior to the performance of those duties. In review of the statute, we have identified language that we consider to be either redundant or confusing, and are seeking through this legislative proposal to clarify that language and make it simpler for interested registered dental hygienists to apply for licensure as registered dental assistants. The memo that I'm going to be summarizing starts on page 147 of your materials. The specific legislative proposal, that text begins on page 151. So there has been, at least in the observations of board staff, an increase in the number of RDH licensees who are applying for RDA licensure, but there has been some confusion concerning the license application requirements for those RDH licensees. And there's some confusion as to whether or not the RDH licensee must provide proof of completion of specific courses, or if it is simply the fact that they are licensed or registered dental hygienist qualifies them to sit for the exam and for RDA licensure. And so the proposal is intended to clarify the language in statute on these specific application procedures. And so the proposal is going to do three major things. We're intending to eliminate redundant license requirements, to clarify the requirements for RDA the educational requirements for RDA additional duties, and we're to clarify the requirements for licensure of registered dental hygienists as registered dental assistants. So specifically, we're proposing adding to Business and Professions Code section 1752.1 a new paragraph to subdivision A that would clarify that a licensed registered dental hygienist could meet the requirements for RDA licensure by submitting an application to the board and through satisfactory performance on the registered dental assistant combined written and law and ethics examination. This would reduce RDA licensure redundancy so that the licensed RDA would not have to retake certain courses that are required for RDA licensure that the registered dental hygienist already takes, either in the course of their licensure as an RDA or in renewal of that license. Additionally, we're proposing to amend Business Professions Code Section 1752.4, Subdivision B, to remove certain gender-identifying language and to restructure the sentence, the section for improved clarity. We're also proposing removing the requirement in Subdivision B for RDA submission to the board of evidence of completion of courses in additional duties, and clarify in Subdivision C that the supervising dentist has responsibility to ensure that the registered dental assistant has completed required courses in order to perform those additional duties. We're also proposing repealing Business and Professions Code Section 1752.6, which is outdated and no longer needed. These amendments would make the statute consistent with the broader movement within the state of California towards gender-neutral language. It's going to improve efficiencies in our own board licensing processes and reducing associated staff costs associated with issuing licenses for RDAs. And then finally, we're proposing to amend Section Business and Professions Code Section 1907 to clarify that an RDH licensee, and again that includes all registered dental hygienist types, shall apply for and receive a license as an RDA in accordance with Business and Professions Code Section 1752.1, Subdivision A4. And and to successfully complete any additional education required by Section 1752.4, Subdivision B, as in boy, prior to performance of the registered dental assistant duties. This should clarify for RDH licensees that the requirements to obtain a board-issued RDA license and the additional education requirements to perform additional RDA duties. So what we're asking from the board today is to discuss and consider the described legislative proposal. And again, that starts on page 151 of your materials. We're asking to move to include in the next sunset report the recommendation to amend the Business Profession Code Section 1752.1, 1752.4, and 1907, as well as to repeal Section 1752.6 as described in the legislative proposal. And I'm open to any questions from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Bruggeman. All right, we have a number of things that they're attempting to do in this cleanup, as it were, or transitional bill, or transitional motion. Is there any discussion from the board on any of the things that Mr. Bruggeman just announced to us or talked to us about? Ms. Welch.
Given the concerns raised by Mr. Lum on behalf of the Dental Hygiene Board of California at the Dental Assisting Council meeting, can we get just confirmation from Mr. Lum that we've successfully addressed their concerns in the legislative proposal before the board today?
Good morning, President Felsenfeld, Executive Officer Montez, and board members. Yes, everything has been addressed, and I was actually going to come up during public comment to thank you all for the opportunity to collaborate with Mr. Bruggeman and your staff in amending this language. Everything looks great. The amendments that we've proposed have been accepted, and the only last step, if you all approve it, is I was just going to present it to my board just to make sure that both programs are on board. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and everything looks good.
Collaboration is wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Lum. Is there any board comment on the recommendations? I see none. Is there any other public comment on the recommendations? We have two people coming up. So, Ms. Randolph, you want to go first? And On the microphone, please. Thank you.
Melody Randolph, representing the California Association of Dental Assisting Teachers. We definitely recognize the need for cleanup language. So this has been confusing for years on what a hygienist would have to do to become an RDA. So certainly not in opposition to cleanup language. However, there are a couple of things in this specific language that would have direct negative repercussions on dental assistants, because this is having to do with our regulatory language for dental assistants. First of all, before that, we know that there's going to be a couple of bills coming forward, one sponsored by CDA, one sponsored by another organization in this next legislative cycle that's going to address regulatory language having to do with utilization of dental auxiliaries. So some of these things are already being addressed and discussed in other bills coming forward as well. However, the specific issues that we have here are, one, on page 152, having to do with removing the requirement of board-approved 2-hour course in DPA and board-approved 8-hour course in infection control. That is a huge change to dental assistants. So what we're saying with this change here is that dental assistants would no longer have to take a board-approved course in infection control. They could take any course in infection control for 8 hours, and our specific board-approved course in infection control has specific requirements for the didactic requirements and for lab requirements. So taking out these two words, board-approved, would mean that an unlicensed DA could take any course in infection control on using gloves or using, this or that, but nothing having to do with specific didactic requirements or a lab requirement. That's huge. And then the other issue that we see here is in taking away the requirement to have to prove to the board that they have completed the Pitt and Fisher sealant certification requirement, brings problems to the fact that there are so many unlicensed dental assistants doing illegal, or licensed dental assistants doing illegal functions. We really strongly suggest that we keep them having to prove that they've taken the Pitt and Fisher sealant course when they renew their license. So we would oppose the striking of 1752.6.
Go ahead.
Good
Thank
morning.
you, Ms. Randolph. Ms. Becker.
Good morning. Sherry Becker, California Dental Assistants Association. I concur with the comments made by Melody Randolph representing KDAT, and would also like to insert concern with some of the requirements coming to the board for proof of courses being put back onto the supervising dentist for documentation, that we feel that that should be part of the board's responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other on-site public comment? Seeing none, is there any public comment from those via WebEx? And will the DCA moderator please once again activate the telephone lines for the comments from the WebEx participants?
This is the moderator, not the direction of the board. I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
That will be fine. Thank you.
Oh, I apologize. Looks like we got a raised hand in right as I was closing that.
Quite all right.
All right, give me one moment while I get my timer back up. We have a request for public comment from individual identified as Zena Delling. Zena, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Yes, I am
I would like to say that I concur with Melody Randolph and Sherry Becker on this matter. And a question that I do have for the board is that if the hygienist become, or they have their RDA license, will they be practicing RDA functions? So that would be a concern of mine, because if they're not practicing RDA functions, I don't know if they would be qualified to, do their duties. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Moderator, do you have any other participants who wish to comment?
There are no other further participants who wish to comment.
Okay, then thank you. I think council would like to address some of these issues relative to our code. So, Ms. Welch?
With respect to the concern about removing the requirement for a board-approved course, on page 152 of the materials, this is in section 1752.1, subsection D. If you'll look at paragraphs 3 and 4, we're removing board-approved there, those words in those paragraphs, but board-approved is now going to be applied under subdivision D. If you look on line 4 of subdivision D of the meeting materials, you'll see that it includes board-approved courses. That's the requirement there. So then all of the courses listed under subdivision D and 3 and 4 for Dental Practice Act and infection control are now included in that list. Board approved, that requirement is maintained for those courses. So I think that'll resolve the concern about board approval. With respect to deleting 1752.6, I would just note that that's an old requirement that was intended to address in requirements as of January 1, 2010, trying to get RDAs who were registered prior to that date. They had to submit Pitt and Fisher sealant course completion prior to their first expiration of a renewal. So this was Pitt and Fisher sealant requirement came into play January 1, 2010, and so for all of those RDAs who were licensed before that date, they needed to submit proof of Pitt and Fisher sealant completion upon their renewal to get up to speed. So we believe that this is an old requirement, so those RDAs who were previously registered before January 1, 2010 just needed to submit their proof of Pitt and Fisher sealant on their renewal. So I see Ms. Randolph shaking her head, and I would prefer that she come up and explain where there is no other Pitt and Fisher sealant requirement for RDA registration or renewal.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this. So what's happening here is RDAs who become RDAs on and after January 1 have to show proof that they've taken the Pitt and Fisher sealant course. So people prior to 2010 don't have to do sealants at all. People that get their RDA after 2010 have to show proof to the dental board that they've completed the Pitt and Fisher sealant course as a condition of their renewal, their second renewal, license renewal as part of their CEs. So this is a current regulation and is certainly relevant. We have many, many RDAs who become an RDA after 2010 via on-the-job pathway who are an RDA who haven't taken a Pitt and Fisher sealant course prior to becoming an RDA, because it's not a requirement prior to becoming an RDA, but it is a requirement that they do it by their second license renewal and show proof of that as a condition of their license renewal. So this is a relevant current regulation.
Thank you, Ms. Randolph. I'm concerned about approving repeal of this section at this time. I would either want to look further into this issue or not repeal it right now. So if the board is so inclined to approve this legislative proposal, I would request that the board not include a repeal of Business and Professions Code Section 1752.6 at this time. We can look into it and bring this issue back to the board at a later meeting if it is necessary to repeal it, but I think for purposes of this legislative proposal, perhaps we can just sit tight on this particular code section for now. So there's one other issue that was brought up with respect to putting responsibility on the supervising dentist for ensuring completion of courses. As we explained during the Dental Assisting Council meeting, right now, board staff is tasked with reviewing course certificates and issuing subsequent registrations that identify the courses, the course certificates that the RDAs have completed. The board is not currently authorized to charge for these services, and so we're recognizing that the board is not going to be reimbursed for this time, and we've got a supervising dentist who we believe, board staff believes, is better situated to review these courses, course certificates, and ensure that the dental assistant has completed the courses as required under the statute prior to authorizing that employee to perform services on patients. So that's the issue we're trying to address. We did hear some opposition during the Dental Assisting Council meeting. So this is a policy issue before the board that you should, decide whether or not you're okay with moving the responsibility of ensuring completion of those courses over to the supervising dentist.
Yes,
Are we good?
I just came back up to thank you for the clarification on the other one. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
That's why our attorney is here.
Yes.
All good. We are ready. We're ready for a motion. I think Ms. Alagi is going to do that for us. And we're on page, for those who are following in our books, page 150 under action requested, and she's going to pick it up from the middle of that action requested paragraph. Go ahead, Ms. Alagi.
The motion is to include in the board's next sunset review report a recommendation to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1752.1, 1752.4, and 1907 as written in the attached text, to clarify the application requirements of RDH to obtain an RDA license and educational requirements to perform additional RDA duties.
Thank you. Is there a second? I see Dr. Forge is a second. Is there further board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there any additional public comment from the on-site people on the motion? I see Dr. Atchison and Ms. Becker are approaching. So, Dr. Atchison, I think you got up first.
Dr. Guy Atchison, can you hear me?
We can.
I'd like to comment on this shifting the responsibility for an RDA to show proof of having completed a course or any requirement to the supervising dentist as opposed to the board. And I'll just share that I have personal knowledge of many dentists who are not following those guidelines or exhibit that level of organizational management of their staff. And so I have great concern about this also, unless the board has a way to verify that the dentist is accomplishing this. And then that just creates twice as much work as if you just required the submission of a course completion certificate. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Atchison. Ms. Becker?
I agree with previous comments. Sherry Becker, California Dental Assistants Association, and just needed to confirm that in the motion you are not adding that repeal, that was eliminated.
The motion does not include repeal.
Thank you.
Ms. Randolph?
Melody Randolph, California Association of Dental Assisting Teachers. I would agree, and this with the previous comment about dentist supervision, as we're moving more and more to corporate dentistry and dentists as employers. We've got a big issue with dentists not even knowing what their assistants are licensed or not licensed to be able to do, and to make them responsible for ensuring this. That's a board's duty, and I see many, many, many instances where dentists are not following through and ensuring that the assistants are licensed appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional on-site public comment? Is there any public comment for those participating via WebEx? Would the DCA moderator once again facilitate the telephone lines for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it does look like we have a request for comment from Zena Delling. And Zena, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
I would like to say that I agree with Dr. Etchinson, and it's nice to hear that a doctor understands our fight here as educators. Also, I agree with Melody Randolph regarding this situation. Thank you.
Any additional public comment from those participating via WebEx?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
That will be okay. Thank you. I believe we're ready to vote. No, I'm sorry, Ms. Welch.
Okay, so on the issue of repealing 1752.6, that currently requires an RDA on or after January 1, 2010 to provide evidence of successful completion of board-approved course and the application of Pitt and Fisher sealants prior to the first expiration of his or her license renewal. I'm looking at 1752.4. Subdivision B requires an RDA. It says an RDA may only perform the following additional duties if he or she has completed a board-approved registered dental assistant education program in those duties. And paragraph 4 says the application of Pitt and Fisher sealants. That's what I was looking for, that additional board-approved course in Pitt and Fisher sealants. I think that's already covered under 1752.4 paragraph or subdivision B4. So I'm coming back to repealing 1752.6 because by now, anyone who's been registered since January 1, 2010 as a dental assistant should have completed the Pitt and Fisher sealant course, because the only way they can continue to do Pitt and Fisher sealants is by complying with 1752.4B4. That's the course requirement. I believe that 1752.6 was to say, hey, everybody who is registered before 2010 has to go ahead and complete that course now. But anyone who's been issued a registration since then has already had to come into compliance with 1752.6 because that was their first renewal after the passage of that law. But now 1752.4 B4 applies to everyone else who's registering and wanting to perform additional duties of pit and fissure sealants. I apologize for the back and forth here, but I believe that, you know, if we can hash some of these things out now, we can avoid additional discussion later. Oh, and I've got one more comment with respect to Mr. Atchinson's concern about the board having a way to verify a dentist is ensuring compliance with course completion. Today, a dentist who is not complying with the law could have their dental assistants perform these procedures, regardless of whether or not they completed the required courses. The board has the ability to go in and inspect. That is how the board verifies whether or not dentists are properly complying and their employees are complying with the law. Otherwise, you know, the board doesn't have omnipotent power to see whether or not dentists and their employees are complying. So having these dental assistants submit their course certificates and review them really doesn't serve any better purpose than the supervising dentist reviewing them, because either they're going to comply with the law or they're not. And the only way the board is going to know later that there was non-compliance is when a complaint is filed or there's a random inspection. Okay, I'm done.
You're not, because I have a question for you. Just to be on the safe side, to make sure that we're all clear, so you're suggesting that the repeal of that last section is still appropriate?
I do believe the repeal is appropriate because 1752.4B4 maintains the requirement to complete a pit and fissure sealant course, a board-approved pit and fissure sealant course, to perform that extra duty. I see Ms. Randolph shaking her head, and I really want to make sure that we get this right.
Is it okay if we generate a little bit of conversation on this? We don't generally go back and forth on public comment, but if it's going to clarify this to facilitate the actions of the board for the future, I think it would be important enough to do that, to break the rules a little tiny bit. So go ahead, Ms. Randolph.
Thank you. If your logic there follows, then the logic would also follow that that is true for 1, 2, and 3 underneath subsection B. So subsection B says that they can only perform 1, 2, and 3 below if they take an extra course in those duties. So an RDA who becomes an RDA after 2010 has to do a sealant course. That's a requirement of their continuing education. 1, 2, and 3, they have to do a course if they want to do those duties. So 4 is forcing RDAs who become an RDA after 2010 to take a sealant course. And then 1752 is just requiring them to prove that via their certification. So they are required to do it after 2010. So it's not a given. Sealants is not a duty of all RDAs automatically when they become an RDA after 2010. Does that help?
We're getting some nodding, but we're also checking the DEP, so hang on.
So when I look at 1752.6, I see that that requirement for continuing education was to be taken prior to the first expiration of the license.
In which CE is required, which is their actual second renewal. Right.
Right, so that's one time. It's not an ongoing continuing education requirement
Correct.
for the life of the registration.
Right, they just have to prove it once. So when they show CE units, the first time they have to show CE units, it has to include pit and fissure sealant certification.
Right, but wouldn't they, under 1752.4, to perform that duty, have to have already taken the Pitt and Fisher sealant course? If they're not performing that, why are we requiring them to take this course?
Well, the why behind a lot of our laws is a problem, but that is the law. So whether or not, and we get that all the time. We get people calling us to take the sealant course, that's being required to take the sealant course, that works in Perio, for example. They never place sealants, but they're required to take the sealant course. That's a totally different issue. But they are required to take the sealant course by their second license renewal. And so 1752 is just saying, because they're required to do that, they're having to show proof of that to the board on their license renewal.
Bear with us. Let's have Ms. Olney come in and comment on that. I think she's got something she'd like to tell us, and then we'll get to you, sir.
Thank you, Jessica Olney. And yes, I did want to clarify that a dental assistant who is applying for a license is not required to submit proof of Pitt and Fisher sealants. They can be issued a license without that certificate, and it's not required until their first renewal, where they must complete continuing education, which is usually their second renewal. And at that point, the BREE system is set up to look for that identifier on their license. So the applicant or the licensee by that time will submit their certificates. The reason we were asking to repeal that section is, again, because the board cannot charge a fee for reviewing and making the amendments to the license. And this is, these are additional duties that are taken on by staff who have to review the certificates that are sent to the office and update the license so that it shows that they have taken that Pitt and Fisher sealant course.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Atchison.
Well, that comment kind of confuses me a little bit. So I go back to the dentist being required to verify that an assistant has completed the approved dental Pitt and Fisher sealant course, as opposed to the board verifying that. But if at the second renewal, the certificate is required to be sent in to the board, then that takes care of it, from my concern. But if that certificate is not required to be sent to the board and is the requirement of the supervising dentist, then I have significant problems with that, because an investigation by the board is only generated by a complaint, and who's going to make the complaint? The assistant that's being allowed to do duties that he or she doesn't have the requirements completed to do? I don't think so.
Thank you. Ms. Becker, we don't want to get into a loop of redoing everything. We're looking at the need to repeal this one section, I believe. So let's keep it tight to that, if you will, Ms. Becker.
Thank you. Sherry Becker, California Dental Assistants Association. I'm saddened to hear that the repeal for this is also including staff shortage and finances of the board, that I think if we need more money to do the due diligence of the board, then those fees need to be passed along somehow, some way, and that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Welch, anything more?
No, I would just say that I think with Ms. Olney's clarification of the staff's request to repeal 1752.6, I think that the board should consider whether or not it wants to amend the motion
To leave it in.
to include repeal of 1752.6.
We don't have to amend the motion. That was on there. In the initial motion.
No. It was left out, that repeal of 1752.
Yes, you're correct. All right, you're correct. All right, so is there any other public comment? We're ready to go. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We have a motion that is correct where we eliminated the repeal, and the motion has not been voted on. We will perfect the motion by allowing for an addition by amendment, an amendment to add something if you would like. I guess we can go to Ms. Olagi if she would like to do that, or anybody can actually amend that motion to include the words and repeal that. Someone? Anyone? Ms. Olagi?
So amend the motion and repeal section 1752.6.
To put that into the sequence as we had it earlier. Is there anyone who's not clear on that? Anyone want to second that amendment? All right, is there any discussion on the amendment before we perfect the motion to put it out there for more public comment? Seeing none, we have to vote on the amendment to see if we want to amend it back in, because the initial motion did not have it in. Dr. Molina, we're voting on an amendment to the motion to add back the words "and repeal section 1752.6.
Okay. Chan,
Chan, yes.
Westenfeld,
Felsenfeld, yes.
Ford? Ford, yes. Larin? Larin, yes. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
Medina?
Medina, yes.
Molina, yes. Morrow?
Dr. Morrow?
Dr. Morrow?
Yes. Morrow, yes.
Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Tucker?
Tucker, aye.
You?
You, aye.
Okay, so the amendment passes.
So we now have an amended motion to put back in 1752.6. This is a new motion now to be considered. And once again, I think we should go through additional board comments on this to be sure everyone is clear. Seeing none, additional public comment from people who are here in the room. Seeing none. And one more option for the people who are on WebEx, to comment if the DCA moderator will once again facilitate the lines for final comments.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. Please do that. Dr. Molina, do you have the motion in its entirety to read back to us? Because I think it's clear that we read this motion, and if you don't, I can do it from here.
Yes.
Go ahead.
To amend the PC section 1752.1, 1750.
Excuse me, Dr. Molina. The original motion had in it to include in the board's next sunset review, that first part of the paragraph. So let's put that back. Dr. Olagi, is that correct?
Okay.
Yeah, let's put that back in to include in the board's next sunset review a recommendation, and now you can take it from there. To amend, now you go.
To amend Business and Professional Code 1752.1, 1752.4, and 1907, and repeal section 1752.6 as written in the attached text.
To clarify.
By the application requirements of RDH to obtain the RDA license and the educational requirements to perform additional RDA duties.
Thank you. That is the motion that is before us. And we are ready to vote at this point because we've had all of our comments. So call the roll for the vote, please.
Okay. Chen?
Chen.
Westenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Ford? Ford, yes. Larin? Larin, yes. McKenzie?
McKenzie, yes.
Medina?
Medina, yes.
Molina, yes. Morrow?
Morrow, yes.
Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco?
Pacheco, aye.
Tucker?
Aye.
Tucker, aye. And you, aye.
You, aye.
Aye. To clarify, who made the motion? Olagi, and you seconded? Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, motion passes.
Let me see. Hang on one second, guys. We've been all over the place on the agenda here. All right, I believe we're ready for the item number 25, the Dental Assisting Council meeting report. Dr. Fowler, are you with us?
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Fowler. Miss Fowler, sorry. Good morning. You can be a doctor here today if you like.
Oh, gee, thanks. So my name's Jerry Fowler. I'm chair of the Dental Assisting Council, and I'm going to be presenting the Dental Assisting Council meeting report for the meeting held on November 17th, 2022. Agenda item 2, public comments, items that were not on the agenda. KDAT Special Projects Director Joan Greenfeld reported that an application was submitted to the Health Workforce Pilot Projects Program, HWPP, to add local anesthesia to the scope of practice for the RDAEF. She requested support from the Dental Assisting Council for this project. Agenda item 3, the meeting minutes for the August 25th, 2022 Dental Assisting Council meeting were approved with no revisions. The motion passed and it was carried. Agenda item 4, update on dental assisting examination statistics, was presented by Ricky Parks, dental assisting program analyst. Agenda item 5, update on dental assisting licensing statistics, was presented by Paige Regali, licensing and examination unit manager. Agenda item 6, update on status of surveys regarding registered dental assistant and extended functions, administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, was presented by Jerry Fowler, Chair, Dental Assistant Council. As directed, OPES worked with the board, the Dental Assisting Council, to develop 2 surveys that were administered to California licensed RDAEFs and dentists. The surveys gathered information regarding length of licensure and practice setting, types of procedures performed by RDAEFs that require the administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide, percentages of cases that require additional administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide during procedures, and the impact that this has on patients. The surveys also included questions that asked RDAEFs and dentists how expanding scope of practice for RDAEFs to include the administration of local anesthesia and nitrous oxide would impact patients and the delivery of dental health services, and whether responding practitioners supported this expanded scope if it is required, expanded scope if it required additional education and training. Beginning September 1st, 2022, RDAEFs and dentists who had email addresses on file with the board were sent electronic messages that included a link to complete the online survey. Practitioners who did not have an email on file were sent a letter containing information on how to access the survey. The board also advertised the survey on its website. The survey remained open for participation from September 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2022. A total of 1,256 RDAEFs received an email invitation, and an additional 430 RDA practitioners received a letter inviting them to participate in the survey. A total of 27,426 dentists who had emails on file with the board received an email invitation, and 4,500 dentists received letters inviting them to participate in the survey. Of those, 763 RDAEFs indicated that they were currently practicing, and they were included for further analysis of the survey. And of the dentists who responded, 727 indicated they were currently practicing and supervising RDAEFs, and they would be included for further analysis as well. OPES is in the process of completing analysis of survey responses and will provide a memo of the complete results for a report to be presented at the February board meeting 2023. Ms. Fowler also acknowledged receipt of 2 letters of opposition regarding allowing RDAEFs the additional duty to administer local anesthesia and nitrous oxide. One letter was from the California Dental Hygienists Association, and the other was from the California Dental Hygiene Educators Association. Ms. Fowler explained that the DAC is still in phase 1 on this topic, gathering data via a survey to determine if we should move forward or not with making local anesthesia and nitrous oxide an allowable duty for the RDAEF. The results of that survey will be presented at the February 2023 dental board meeting. Ms. Fowler expressed reassurance that patient care and safety are the #1 concern for the dental board. So, if it is decided to move forward with making local anesthesia and nitrous oxide an allowable duty for the RDAEF, the board will ensure that the educational program will be more robust and comprehensive than the program that dental hygiene currently has in place, which in fact is more robust in nature than the program for DDS. This is to ensure competency. Agenda item 7, update and discussion on research of dental auxiliary certification and education requirements and review applicable statutes and regulations regarding board approval of registered dental assistant and registered dental assistant extended functions, educational programs, and courses for potential amendments. A report was given by Dental Assistant Council members Ms. Joanne Pacheco and Ms. Kara Miyazaki. Ms. Kara Miyazaki reported that in an effort to determine if other states require certification licensure for dental assistants and/or educational requirements, 8 questions were developed and sent out to all dental boards in the U.S. inquiring whether the state certifies or licenses dental assistants and/or requires educational requirements. They received some responses back from approximately 17 or so states, but they are still waiting for more responses. Before the next Dental Assisting Council meeting in February, the data will be aggregated and a report will be presented at the February Dental Assisting Council meeting. Here are the questions that were sent to the various state boards. Number 1, does your state require a license to practice as a registered or licensed dental assistant? If yes, please answer questions 2 through 7. If no, please answer question 8. Number 2, what education and/or certification requirements does your state have for initial licensure as a registered or licensed dental assistant? Number 3, can applicants qualify for licensure based on work experience? If so, are there specific certifications required in addition to the work experience to qualify for licensure? Number 4, does your state require a specific number of remedial education hours or specific courses for licensure renewal? Number 5, are the education and/or certification courses to qualify for initial licensure approved internally, board staff, or externally, accreditation agency? Number 6, if internal, please briefly explain your approval process and whether your state has reciprocity agreements with other state boards. Number 7, if external, what is the process and what accreditation agencies does your state accept for licensure? Number 8, if your state does not license or register dental assistants, can dental assistants obtain separate certifications, either optional or mandatory, to perform certain duties in the state? Please identify those certifications. And moving on to agenda item 8, discussion and possible action on legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code section 1750 regarding unlicensed dental assistant requirements to perform basic supportive dental procedures. Mr. David Bruggeman, Legislation Regulatory Specialist, presented that agenda item. The BBC section 1750C, section C, sets requirements for an employer of an unlicensed dental assistant to verify course completion for that dental completion within a specific time frame. Section C says the employer of a dental assistant must be responsible for ensuring that the dental assistant who has been in continuous employment for 120 days or more has already successfully completed or successfully completes all of the following within a year of the date of employment. He states that it could be assumed that that 120-day and 1-year periods referenced in the law start on the same date, the date of employment. However, as currently written, the unlicensed dental assistant could be a seasonal or temporary employee, never working 120 days consistent or continuously for an employer, and therefore they would not trigger the requirement for the employer to verify course completion. Clarifying language in statute could eliminate this possibility and reinforce the idea that the 120-day and the 1-year clock starts at the same time, the first day of employment. Excuse me. Board staff requested that council members discuss that time commitment, but during the April 30th, 2021 meeting, the DSC took action to recommend that the board consider legislation proposal to amend the BPC section 1750 subdivision C to specify the employer is responsible for ensuring the dental assistant has successfully completed a board-approved 8-hour infection control course prior to performing any basic supportive dental procedures involving potential exposure to blood, saliva, or other potentially infectious materials. Due to the complexity and length of discussion regarding the amendment of BPC Section 1750, it was decided to table this agenda item for now and discuss it during the February 2023 Dental Assisting Council meeting. And lastly, agenda item 9, election of the 2023 council chair and vice chair was presented by Tracy Montez, executive officer. Nominations were taken and action was taken to nominate Tracy Reed Espinoza as chair and Kara Miyazaki as vice chair for the 2023 Dental Assisting Council. Their term begins January 1st, 2023. That concludes the November 18th Dental Assisting Council report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Is there any board member discussion on the report? Seeing none, is there any on-site public comment on the report? Seeing none, is there any participants via WebEx who would like to comment on the report? Will the DCA moderator once again please activate the telephone line so that we can hear from people on the WebEx?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And it does look like we have a request for comment from Allison Wagstaff. Allison, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
Hello, this is Allison Wagstaff speaking on behalf of the California Dental Hygienists Association. I just wanted to comment on agenda item 6 and thank you, Ms. Fowler, for acknowledging our letter of opposition. We're heartened to hear that the Dental Assisting Council and Dental Board of California's highest priority is patient safety in considering the expansion of scope of duties to allow RDA-EFs to administer local anesthesia and nitrous oxide oxygen sedation. As detailed in our letter of opposition with the California Dental Hygiene Educators Associations, RDHs undergo significant educational requirements, both as program prerequisites and during their RDH associates or bachelor's programs. We're eager to hear the results of the OPES report at the February meeting and working with you guys to hear what happens next. Thank you so much.
Are there any other comments from members via WebEx?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. We have no action on this item, but we want to thank Ms. Fowler for her leadership this year. And moving on to the next item of business, which is going to be a 15-minute break. Let's get us back here at about 10:45, and we will continue on. Or 10:47 for those of you who are really digital. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed your break. We're now on item 26, report on the Dental Hygiene Board of California activities. Mr. Lum, please join us again.
Thank you, President Veldenfeld, board members, and Executive Officer Montez. I'm Anthony Lum, the Dental Hygiene Board's Executive Officer, to report the activities to you. My president, Dr. Carmen Dones, unfortunately apologizes for not being here to provide the report, but now you're stuck with me. So. Over the last 6 months, we've been extremely busy working on the following items. I have 2 words that say how busy we were. Sunset Review. Sunset Review has been a beast over the last 6 months. We've been trying to streamline the process. Every time I do one of these sunset reports, I try to streamline the process, but something always comes up. Never gets easier. So, but at this point in time, we've gone through a draft, and the board has reviewed it in October. So they've had time to revise it a little bit, and hopefully at tomorrow's meeting, we can put together the finalization of our report prior to submitting it to the legislature before the January 1st, 2023 deadline. So that's a huge accomplishment for myself and staff, so get that off my plate. The next one is regulations. We continue to work on promulgating regulations and identify the need to revise existing regulatory sections as needed. Most of them are continuing the regulatory process since our last report, with several of them in departmental phases through DCA or agency prior to moving forward to the Office of Administrative Law for approval. Currently, we have 4 regulatory packages in various stages, and a few of them are a retired license status for dental hygienists. We have a fairly large pool of experienced dental hygienists who are ready to exit stage left in a good manner. So that's well overdue, and I'm hoping it's finalized soon. Another one that we have is the authority to cite and fine or place dental hygiene educational programs on probation as well. And the last one that I wanted to bring to your attention is inspection parameters for mobile dental hygiene clinics and portable dental equipment owned by registered dental hygienists in alternative practices, and those are in various stages of approval as well. In fact, tomorrow I'm hoping to announce, I'm going to give you pre-announcement, but I just found out that our retired license category was actually approved by the Office of Administrative Law 2 days ago, so that'll be going into effect as of January 1st. The next item is our educational program reviews. Site visits to the dental hygiene educational programs resumed, and the board has completed its goal to initially review all 26 programs at least once for compliance of the law. This will provide a baseline we can compare for any subsequent visits that we complete. Although there were many issues some schools needed to address, most of them were in full compliance of the law. To minimize disruption to the schools, we plan to conduct future site visits that coincide with their CODA accreditation site visits, unless other issues arise, like if we receive complaints or if there's other issues that are made known to the board, like infection control issues, then we would do additional site visits as well. Another issue that we've been working on is the board assembled an Alternative Pathways to Licensure task force a couple of years ago. And they've met several times to come to some conclusions on recommendations to provide to our licensing and examination committee. The result of the meetings concluded that the dental hygiene clinical examination for California graduates was no longer necessary due to several factors. A couple of them are that the educational programs teach and train the students based on completed clinical competencies deemed sufficiently rigorous to eliminate the clinical exam requirement. And the other one is that the subjectivity of grading and the randomness of the live patient examination eliminates consistency for testing from one student to the next. The task force presented its recommendation to the board's Licensing and Examination Committee at our October 7th, 2022 meeting. It recommended to eliminate the clinical exam requirement for California graduates who apply for the dental hygiene license within 3 years of graduation. Graduates who delay and apply after 3 years from graduation must complete and approve the clinical exam. The passage of an approved clinical exam remains a requirement for all out-of-state applicants. This was determined because we don't know the level of education that out-of-state applicants receive. All we know that we receive them is that they're CODA accredited. So this way, it maintains a level of consistency for those individuals. Let's see. After approval at the committee's meeting, the recommendation was presented to the full board, who voted to accept it at the October 8, 2022 board meeting. The legislation for the elimination of the clinical exam will be presented to the board's sunset review, would be placed in the board's sunset review report. And hopefully, like I said, the board will be looking at the final version of the report tomorrow, and hopefully that's approved. Is that me? Sorry, I hear a phone. I thought it was me. The last item is for personnel. The board is currently undergoing a transformation with several members terming out. Currently, 2 long-term members have been replaced, and 3 other members will be participating in their last board meeting tomorrow. The governor's new appointments for these members is still pending, including our dentist member. For staff, we continue to fill our vacant positions as quickly as possible to address the board's work, and currently have 4 vacancies that I'm diligently trying to get backfilled. That concludes my report, and I want to thank you for the continued efforts, communication, and collaboration on dental issues like the legislation that was presented earlier. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lum. We always enjoy your presentations. We look forward to our own sunset review starting next year. So, beast, did you say?
It's a beast.
Thank you. We're ready for it. Is there any board questions or comments for Mr. Lum? Seeing not, Dr. Morrow, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for coming and meeting with us. I appreciate it. I want to make sure that I understood and heard you correctly. My understanding is that the Dental Hygiene Board has decided to eliminate the need of a licensing examination involving a patient for licensure in California as a dental hygienist. Is that correct?
What they determined and voted to approve was to actually eliminate any clinical exam requirement for graduates, California graduates,
Okay.
If they apply for the license within 3 years.
And is that based on the fact that those schools are all CODA approved?
Yes, all the schools are CODA accredited, and plus they teach on a competency-based level. So the clinics are deemed that they teach at a high level, so that way a clinical exam would not be needed.
Okay, I commend your board for taking that step. Do you know, are there any other state hygiene boards that are doing the same?
I wish I had time to research that, but with our sunset this year, we just haven't had the time.
Good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No? Okay. Any other board comment for Mr. Lum? Any on-site comment from the public? I see Ms. Becker's coming up, so.
I believe that Carrington.
Identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. Sherry Becker, California Dental Assistants Association. Thank you for the reminder. I believe that Carrington College does have a hygiene program, and I'm not sure if it's CODA approved or not, but there may be other programs that are not CODA approved for dental hygiene. I'd like clarification on that.
Carrington College has 2 campuses, one in San Jose and one here in Sacramento. They're both CODA accredited.
Is there any other on-site comment? Seeing none, are there public comments from those individuals who are participating via WebEx? Will the DCA moderator once again facilitate the lines for public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. Do that. Thank you, Mr. Lum.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good luck tomorrow. We move to item number 27. Mr. Bruggeman is going to discuss the prospective legislative proposals.
So this item serves as a reminder to the board members and to any stakeholders that they have the option to submit proposals in writing to the board before, during, or after board meetings for possible consideration by the board at a future board meeting. So we're just simply seeking to remind the public and our stakeholders that they have the opportunity to present legislative proposals. Anything that we presented right now cannot be acted on the board until a future meeting, however, but they have the opportunity to present at this time.
Did you want to, just the information is there?
That's all that we have at this time. Anyone has
anything? All right. Any board members have anything they want to consider for the future? No? Ms. Medina says no. We're good. All right. Is there public comment? I guess public comment on that from on-site individuals? And is there any comment from those who are participating via WebEx? Will the DCA moderator once again please open the microphones, or telephones, excuse me, for facilitation of that?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. And I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access these features and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please do. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 28, the election of officers. Ms. Montez is going to take care of that for us.
Good morning. Okay, pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 1606, the Dental Board of California is required to elect a president, vice president, and a secretary from its membership. Pursuant to the board's policy, it is the board's policy to elect officers at the final meeting of the calendar year for service during the next calendar year. So the newly elected officers shall assume duties of their respective offices on January 1st of the new year, 2023. So we will start with the Office of Secretary. We currently have one nomination, Dr. Loren, and I'm confirming that, yes, you would like to accept this nomination? Yes, I do. Thank you. I'd like to open it to the floor. Are there any more nominations for Secretary? Dr. Chan?
Actually, we need to formally nominate her. So we'd like to nominate Dr. Laren. History of chocolate making.
Thank you. And a second on that nomination? Okay, Dr. Felsenfeld? Okay, I'd like to take a roll call vote for Dr. Loren in the position of Secretary of the Dental Board of California beginning January 1st, 2023.
This is Marella Turan. I will call the roll. Chan?
Chan, yes.
Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, yes.
Forge? Loren? McKenzie?
Yes.
Medina?
Yes.
Molina? Morrow?
Yes.
Olagi?
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco?
Pacheco, yes.
Tacker?
Thakur, yes.
You.
You, yes.
The motion passed.
Thank you, and congratulations. Moving on to the Office of Vice President, we have Dr. Molina and Ms. Pacheco have been nominated for this position. I need to confirm that Dr. Molina would like to accept the nomination. Okay, and Ms. Pacheco, would you like to accept the nomination? Thank you. So I need a motion to approve this slate of two candidates for the Office of Vice President. Is there a motion?
I'll move that.
A second? Okay, thank you. So we will now take a roll call vote for the position of Vice President for the Dental Board of California 2023. We need a majority of 7 to confirm an officer for this position, and so if we do not receive 7 votes, we will have to re-vote until we receive a majority because we have 2, I know, very qualified candidates. So when you hear your name, please indicate which candidate that you are voting for. Morella, please take the roll call vote.
Chan?
Chan, Pacheco?
Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld, abstain.
Forge? Loren? McKenzie?
Mackenzie, Pacheco.
Medina?
Medina Molina.
Do we say Molina and Pacheco? Okay, Molina. Morrow?
Morrow abstain.
Olagi,
Olagi, Pacheco.
Pacheco, Tucker,
Abstain.
you,
You, Pacheco.
I have 4 and 5. Morella, do you have that? Okay. So we're going to have to revote because we need 7 for a single candidate. So let's do the roll call again, please.
Chan,
Chan Pacheco.
Felsenfeld,
Felsenfeld Pacheco.
Forge, Loren, McKenzie,
Pacheco.
Medina,
Molina.
Molina, Morrow,
Morrow Pacheco.
Olagi,
Olagi, Pacheco.
Pacheco,
Pacheco.
Tucker,
Pacheco.
you,
You, Pacheco.
Four and 7, Morella, is that what you have? Yes, I do. Okay, so Ms. Pacheco will be the vice president for the 2023 year. Congratulations. I know this was a difficult vote. Okay, moving on to our last office. We have Dr. Felsenfeld has been nominated for president. Dr. Felsenfeld, do you accept this nomination?
I do.
Do we have any other nominees? Do we have any other nominees?
I nominate Dr. Yu.
Dr. Yu, do you accept this nomination?
Because the last minute call from some of the team that I have from the Bay Area regarding some of the big projects that I have next year. So I need to spend more time, and then I won't have enough time to assume the duty of president. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for your nomination.
Thank you for your consideration. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the nomination of Dr. Felsenfeld?
Also moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Morella, would you please do a roll call vote?
Mm-hmm.
this is Marilla Turan. I will call the roll. Chan,
Chan, aye.
Felsenfeld,
Felsenfeld, aye.
Forge, Loren, McKenzie,
McKenzie, yes.
Medina,
Aye.
Molina, Morrow,
Morrow, aye.
Olagi,
Olagi, yes.
Pacheco,
Pacheco, yes.
Tucker,
Tucker, yes.
you.
You, yes.
The motion passed.
Thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Felsenfeld.
Thank you. I look forward to a busy year. We have a beast on our hands, I've been told, so we're going to work very hard. But before we get up and leave, I have a point of personal privilege that I'd like to ask you to give me about 5 more minutes. It's not going to be a speech accepting anything. We do have some we do have some things we have to discuss. And as soon as we get the materials that I need, Wilbert's kind of limping up there with his bad knee. We're going to wait for adjournment. We're going to do this and then adjourn after the fact. I want this on the record. One of the things about being on the board not as long as I have been, but attending the board, sitting in the public thing for as many years as I have, is I've gotten to know many of the board members, many of the board staff, many of the board activities, and I have a good appreciation for that. And one of the things that has to happen from time to time is you have to be sad and say to, like Dr. Morrow, that we are losing him. Last night we had a nice dinner on his behalf, but I think we should do something a little bit more official in letting him go off into the sunset or become a board watcher, as he told me he would be doing. And I have 2 things for you. Dr. Morrow, if you come on up here for a second, I'll try to speak loud enough so I can get caught. I'm not very tall, and that's a very good thing. So we have two things. Number one is a plaque that says Stephen Morrow, DDS, MS, and he was on the Dental Board of California for 12 years. That's a long time. And this is in grateful appreciation for your outstanding service and leadership. Steve, I'm going to read the next thing. Is going to list everything he has done, but Steve's been around a long time. He knows the code. He's memorized all those sections. He has represented education. That's the seat he's in. He's an educator. He's done very well with that. He understands CODA. He went to Mexico a couple of times on our behalf. He even went out to Moldova, wherever that is, on our behalf, and looked at those schools prior to their being approved for sending students here for their license. He is a very knowledgeable man, and he is not only a good colleague, he is a friend. He and I have been good friends. We've done things together for many years. I am going to miss him, except he can sit with Dr. Witcher. Okay? Stephen, congratulations. Here's your plaque. I guess I'm going to pictures for this. We have one more framed. This is a resolution, and I'm going to read this whole thing because it's going to explain who he's been and what he's done, who he is and what he's done. This is a resolution that Stephen Morrow, DDS, whereas Stephen Morrow faithfully served as a member for the Dental Board of California from August 26, 2010 to December 31st, 2022, and whereas Dr. Morrow faithfully served as Vice President of the Board from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, and the secondary presidency from January 1st, 2016 to December 31st, 2016. And whereas Dr. Morrow faithfully served as a member of the Legislative and Regulatory Committee, a member of the Examination Committee, a member of the Prescription Drug Abuse Committee, a member of the Licensing, Certification, and Permits Committee, and a member of the Anesthesia Committee. And whereas throughout his years of service, he gave tirelessly of himself and his ideas and acted forthrightly and conscientiously, always with the public interest and welfare in mind, and whereas he discharged these important responsibilities in a manner reflecting great credit upon himself and the board, now therefore be it resolved this 18th day of November 2022 that the members of the Dental Board of California express heartfelt appreciation to Stephen Morrow for the outstanding contribution he made during his term of service to the board. Signed by me and signed by Kim Kirchmeyer, the director. So congratulations again, Stephen. We're going to miss you. We're going to miss you. Take another picture. And with a big goodbye and thank you so much for Dr. Morrow, I declare this meeting adjourned.
Can we have a speech from Dr. Morrow?
Dr. Morrow, would you like to say something before we go?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Yu.
First, I want to say that this has been an experience of my life, obviously. It has been a joy. It has been a pleasure being involved with the Dental Board. And I want to express my my gratitude for support by all of the board members through the past 12 years. But also a very important person in my life is my wife, Sheila, who's standing in the back. Because of my involvement with the board and the amount of time that has taken with trips to various countries, it has put more of a burden on her to keep the household operating, and I appreciate all that you have done in support for me. I love you, and I'm going to be around for a long time.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much.
And now we are officially adjourned. Thank you.
Yes.